Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Scraps and Locos of Britain. Each week we'll take a look at a class of locomotives that didn't make it into preservation. All of these classes will be standard gauge and owned by either a pre-grouping railway company, one of the big four railway companies, and or British Railways. While some classes will get a new build number, most of these classes will be scrapped and likely remain scrapped. Here we go. Our next episode is on the London and South Western Railway H15s. The London and South Western Railway's first 460s were the F13s of 1905. Designed by Douglas Drummond, these were built as a response to increasing passenger traffic. The F13s had 4 cylinders and divided drive, with Walshart's valve gear on the outside cylinders and Stephenson link motion on the inside cylinders. The outside cylinders were positioned further back to provide for a tight enough wheelbase. This created what many would describe as an ungainly front end. The rear driving axle was also positioned beneath the firebox. The restricted firebox size meant that Drummond's 460s had a high coal consumption and a constant susceptibility to hot axle boxes. Maintenance of the class was also expensive and tiresome. Initially intended for express passenger work, the F13s were downgraded to fruit trains and coal trains around Salisbury, Exeter, and London Waterloo, after proving to be too slow for their intended duties. In 1907, Drummond ordered what was essentially an F13 with slightly larger cylinders, piston valves, continuous splashers, and portholes to provide better access to the valve gear. This was the E14. Unfortunately, the E14 had the same teething troubles as the F13s. To make matters worse, the E14 was also inferior to the F13s in terms of coal consumption, earning her the nickname Turkey. Just like with the F13s, the E14 was reassigned to work on freight trains after being deemed too slow for passenger work. In 1912, Drummond was succeeded by Robert Urie after Drummond's death. Upon his arrival, Urie noticed the need for a powerful and reliable freight locomotive. Urie also noticed the shortcomings in the F13s and F14. As a result of these, Urie decided to make his locomotives easier and cheaper to maintain by giving the locomotives 2 outside cylinders with Walshart's valve gear and outside steam pipes. On the last day of 1913, the first member, number 486, was outshopped from Eastleigh Works. Classified as H15, she had a 180 pounds per square inch parallel boiler, 6-foot driving wheels, and 2 21 by 28 inch outside cylinders. This resulted in 26,240 pounds of tractive effort. Between January and June 1914, number 486 was joined by 9 more members. Like many locomotive designers at that time, Urie was a strong advocate of superheating. He ordered numbers 482 to 485 to be fitted with Schmidt superheaters, and numbers 486 to 489 with Robinson superheaters. Numbers 490 and 491, by contrast, were both saturated. However, because of World War I, the trials had to be postponed. When Urie was allowed to test the H15s, he found that the examples with Robinson superheaters were better performers and burned less coal compared to the Schmidt examples. However, the design of the Robinson superheater resulted in the superheated and saturated chambers being adjacent to one another. This resulted in the temperatures changing erratically and made the tubes prone to fatigue. The Schmidt superheaters, by contrast, had dampers on the superheater header. These cooled the gases and caused them to condense and form sulfuric acid. This resulted in high amounts of corrosion on the superheater elements. Several gas leaks were said to have been reported between the superheater header and the elements. Both superheaters were also very difficult and expensive to maintain. These findings prompted Urie to design a superheater which had the saturated headers located above and below the superheated headers. The headers were connected through elements that started at the saturated headers. These would then run through the flue tubes before going to the superheated header. This not only provided a greater efficiency and a better performance on the H15s, but was also easy to maintain. The only issue with the superheater, however, was that the device was expensive and cumbersome to build. In December 1914, Urie ordered the Monsole E14, number 335, to be rebuilt into an H15. This brought the class total to 11 members. Shortly afterwards, she was fitted with the Eastleigh superheater, becoming the first locomotive to be equipped. The only thing that set the locomotive apart from the new builds was the boiler pressure, which was 175 psi. This resulted in 23,688 pounds of tractive effort. The remaining 10 were later rebuilt with the Eastleigh superheater. The Walschaerts valve gear and cylinders were later made interchangeable with the N15s of 1918 and the S15s of 1920. The boilers on the H15s were parallel, so they couldn't be used on either of Urie's other 460s. All 11 members made it into Southern Railway ownership in 1923. After the groupings, Urie was replaced by Richard Monsole. A year later, Monsole ordered more H15s, albeit with a few modifications. These modifications included a straight running plate above the driving wheels and larger outside steam pipes, as well as a modified cab. The straight running plate also made it difficult to distinguish a Monsole H15 from a Monsole S15. The Monsole H15s also had straight splashers, similar to the N15s. Another way to distinguish a Urie H15 from a Monsole H15 were the tender. The Urie H15s had a 5,200-gallon bogie tender, whereas the Monsole variants had a 5,000-gallon water cart tender. The latter tender had a coal capacity of 5 tons, whilst the bogie tenders carried 2 more tons of coal at 7 tons. The Monsole H15s were built in 3 batches. The first 6, numbers 473 to 478, were built between February and June 1924. The next 4, numbers 521 to 524, were built in July and September of that same year. The final 5, numbers 330 to 334, were rebuilt from Drummond's F13s between December 1924 and January 1925. This brought the class total up to 26 locomotives. Compared to the other members of the class, the F13 rebuilds had taller cabs, earning them the nickname of cathedrals. This also meant that anyone under 6 foot would have to stand on a makeshift stool to reach the controls. The other 21 H15s were referred to as city breeds by Guilford crews. As well as being known as cathedrals and city breeds, the H15s were also nicknamed chonkers, presumably due to the massive size of the boiler. In 1927, number 491 was fitted with a 200 psi tapered boiler from the N15s. She also had Monsole's own design of superheater and a tractive effort of 29,155 pounds. The final 6 members received the Monsole superheaters from new, but the remaining 19 members received the Monsole superheater between 1927 and 1934. The H15s also received smoke deflectors during the early and mid-1930s. Like the S15s, the H15s were used on a variety of duties. However, unlike the S15s, the H15s were not allocated all over the Southern Railway. Instead, they were concentrated around the western section, being allocated to Salisbury, Nine Elms, Guildford, and Eastleigh. Their main duties were fast freight trains around the West Country, but they could occasionally be found on passenger trains, particularly summer holiday excursions. Between 1938 and 1939, Monsole's successor, Oliver Bulliard, painted the H15s and N15s in an experimental light green livery. However, after the Second World War, this was changed to malachite green with sunshine yellow lining. All 26 members survived into BR days, and like the Billington Ks, the H15s were still very capable machines despite their age. They fulfilled their purpose of being easy and inexpensive to maintain and proved to be very well constructed. When number 30487 went in for an overhaul in 1954, it came as a surprise that the frames were still in excellent condition despite 40 years of hard work. On the 22nd of January, the following year, number 30485 was involved in an accident at Bournemouth Central with N15 number 30783 Sir Gillimer, caused by the latter locomotive's driver not reading the signals correctly. Number 30485 was so badly damaged that she was written off and sent for scrap, becoming the first of the H15s to be withdrawn. However, the first official withdrawal was number 30490 from Nine Elms that July. The first of the Monsole H15s to go was number 30332 from Salisbury in November 1956. The first Monsole H15 proper to be withdrawn was number 30748 from Nine Elms in April 1959. Due to the class's age and the modernization plan, withdrawals continued steadily. The last of the rebuilds to go was number 30333 from Salisbury in October 1958. The E14 rebuild, number 30335, was withdrawn from Salisbury in June 1959. By 1961, only 9 were left, split between Eastleigh, Salisbury, and Nine Elms. The last of the Urie H15s to go were numbers 30489 and 30491 from Nine Elms in January 1961. The last of the Monsole examples to go were numbers 30475 and 30476 from Eastleigh, 30521 from Nine Elms, and 30523 from Salisbury in December of that year. Although none of the H15s survived into preservation, 8 of their younger siblings are still around. These are 1 N15 and 7 S15s. Interestingly, 2 of the latter are of the original Urie design. The only N15 is number 777 Sir Lamiel, which is in storage at Loughborough on the Great Central and awaiting overhaul at the time of writing. The 7 S15s are listed in the subtitles above. 3 of these, numbers 506, 825, and 847, are operational. Another, number 841, may never run again, due to the condition of her frames. Instead, she is in storage at the North Yorkshire Moors Railway as a source of spares for number 825. This series was inspired by Locomotives of Great Britain by a Rail Air Land and Sea and Top 10 Extinct British Steam Locomotives by Pendennis Castle. Links to both their channels are in the description below. As always, if you have any extinct British steam locomotives you would like me to cover, let me know in the comments below. If you like this video and would like to see more content like this, feel free to like and subscribe. Because September 11th is next Friday, I will not be posting anything new for Scrap Steam Locos of Britain that week. I want to pay my respects to those who lost their lives 19 years ago and to the families of those who lost their lives 19 years ago. Instead, I will post something the week after next. Tune in then when I look at the Great Western Buffalo tanks. Take care everyone, goodbye for now, and before I go, I would like us all to take 2 minutes to remember those who lost their lives 19 years ago.